started this 5-year Hobonichi Techo in 2023, and now that I'm coming close to finishing my 3rd year in this book, I thought it would be fun to share my experience with this book in case starting a 5-year journal is something that you might be interested in. I don't really show this book too often on my channel because it is quite personal, and I decided early on that I didn't want to censor anything or put things in this book with the idea that I would be showing them on the internet. However, I have flagged a few pages that I am willing to share with you today, just to give you an idea of how I fill these pages out. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, then I invite you to settle in, grab yourself a beverage, a snack, and something to keep you company and help you feel cozy while we hang out and chat about how I've been using the 5-year Hobonichi Techo in the A5 size. Before we get into the Techo, I do have a couple of follow-ups from my last video, and if you're not interested in hearing the follow-ups, then I will leave a bookmark so you can skip ahead to the flip through of this book. The first update is a few videos ago I shared that I had received some samples of the Kobe strawberry chocolate and milk chocolate ink that was very kindly gifted to me by Mandy from Bookish Artist. And someone left a comment asking if I could show a writing sample of the strawberry chocolate and the milk chocolate, because it can be difficult to get samples of these two inks. It was difficult for me to find samples as well. So this is a longer writing sample of strawberry chocolate and milk chocolate. On this side of the page, I had my Hachimanjia Kubo Zakura pen that's in a fine nib, and this is what it looked like. As you can see, it is a gorgeous ink, and I am flying through this sample, and I'm trying so hard not to give in to the urge to buy a bottle of this because I do really love this ink, but I also have a lot of other pink inks that I want to sample, so I think those ink samples will keep me busy for a while, and I think that's going to help me not get this ink. On this side, this is milk chocolate, and I have it inked in my Sailor Pro Gear Slim, and that is an extra fine nib. I'm pleasantly surprised by how legible this is, considering my extra fine nib is one of my most finicky nibs, and generally speaking, if the ink passes the test in this nib, then I feel pretty good about it in any of my other pens. I believe the person who asked was Rizema or Rizema. I hope I'm pronouncing your username right. But yeah, you were asking about the writing samples, and here they are. Let me know if you have any questions. I had a question, I believe this was from Lillian, that asked if I could compare the cream paper in the Midori Hibino to the Hobonichi Weeks. So I have my Hibino here, and I have the Hobonichi Weeks over here. Taking a look at it, it's kind of hard to see if there is much of a difference. I think the Hobonichi Weeks paper is a little darker. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna just move it up to the camera. Hopefully you can see that. It's very similar. In my last video, I did get a lot of really great suggestions on ideas for what I could use this future log page for. So I'm gonna keep track of all of those amazing suggestions, and when I do my full setup video, I will share those suggestions in that video just so that it'll be all together. And if you are looking for more information on the setup, I think it'll make more sense to have that information in that video. So watch out for that. But for anyone who did send me suggestions, thank you so much. I will be happy to include them in my future videos so we can all continue to learn from each other and inspire each other. I do have a list of things that I want to talk about today, so I'm just going to keep this to the side so I can reference it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the book itself. So I currently have the 5-year in this Hobonichi natural leather cover. I'm going to be honest with you and say that it's not my favorite cover. I honestly thought this was going to patina so much more, considering I'm now in my 3rd year of using this book. But I guess because I don't really take this book outside of my home, it doesn't really get a lot of sunlight exposure. And I also have very dry hands, so there aren't really any like hand oils that are getting on this book and helping it age. So I felt at the time this was the best cover to choose from, but now I think there are many more adorable covers, and if I were to do this over again, I would be buying the Haruko Kubota 5-year cover. The only reason why I'm not is just because I already invested in this and I don't really want to sell it and I don't really need another cover. So I'm going to stick with this, but it's not my favorite. The reason why I'm glad that I do have this cover though is because the 5-year cover it has this extra kind of lip around the inside, and because I store this book vertical on my shelf, I was finding that this layer was getting a little bit bent. So having it in this leather cover does help protect the cover itself. And I did try a different leather cover before I landed on this Hobonichi, and you can see here that cover was too tight, so it actually did damage my cover a little bit, and I did not like that. So this is the cover that I'm using. The other thing that I'll say is you can probably tell this is primarily a pen-only book. I've managed to keep it relatively on the thin side, and that's just my preference because I prioritize writing experience in a book over everything else, and I knew that if I started to chunk up this book too much, then I was probably going to lose interest in writing in it. I think when I start my final year, my 5th year, I might start to be a little more liberal with what I add into it, which I don't necessarily think is the best approach, because it would be nice if I added things throughout all 5 years, but by the 5th year, I'll know that that's my last year, so that I probably won't mind so much if it starts to get a little difficult to write in. So in case you're not familiar with the 5-year, when you open it up, you have this cover page. Then you have the full year calendar of each of the years that the book covers. And then it starts right away on the 1st of January. And on the left-hand side, it is broken up into 5 spaces for each year. And then you have a blank page on the right-hand side. So the way that I typically use this is I will write down a little tidbit or mini summary of what happened that day. I initially thought that I was going to use this as a highlight journal or as a gratitude journal because I had been using a monthly calendar in my TN for gratitude, and I thought that because I was consistent with that, I might be able to transfer that practice over into this 5-year. But over time, I realized that sometimes I just don't really want to overthink it, and I don't want to think too hard about what I'm going to say, and I don't really want to overly curate what I write in here. And so I've been much more relaxed about how I fill out my entry for the day, and sometimes it really is like, I went for a run, I went to the grocery store, and that is going to be super boring for anyone else. But for me, what I really like is being able to see little glimpses of what my life was like each year and be able to kind of compare that over the years. So sometimes on this page, I will do a little bit of doodling. Sometimes I will use this as overflow, but I'll show you some examples of different ways that I've filled this in. And then in the back, you have these blank pages for each year. And the way I've been using it is I've been noting down particular highlights throughout the year. So as an end of year practice, what I will do is I will go through the book and I'll just cherry pick certain memories throughout the year that I really want to remember. So as an example, maybe something happened on January 15th that I really want to remember. So I'll write here 01/15, and then I'll just write one line that represents that highlight. So I'll know if I want more detail, then I can go back to the corresponding day. So that's how I've been handling these blank pages. There's a remember this page, which I had initially thought I could use as a currently inked type of thing, but I tend to use whatever pen I feel like using in my entries. I don't really designate like one pen for 1 year or one pen and ink for 1 month. I just grab whatever I feel like grabbing when I'm filling out this book, and this wouldn't have been enough space to cover that, so I stopped updating this page. Okay, so this next page is a gifts page. So this side is already filled out, but it's just a chart that allows you to note down gifts that you either received or gave to someone else. And what I use this for is gifts that I have gotten for my family. So this is just to help me remember to not duplicate gifts, because it's getting hard to remember those things. So I do log those, and I find that I don't know if this is really enough space. I think I'm going to run out before I finish this book. And then you have this page here, addresses for 16 people. I have not filled this out clearly. I don't really think it's necessary, but if I were to fill this out, I would probably just fill out addresses of my family members. And then you have a page here for lists, which I find kind of interesting. There's 4 spaces, so it's not even necessarily that you would dedicate one per year, since this is a 5-year. I don't use this at all. If anyone else uses this, let me know what you use this for. But right now it's just blank. And then you've got this page here. I think it's kind of like a fill out personal details, which I haven't done. And then you just have a personal notes page, which I have not filled out. So not a lot of extra pages in the 5-year compared to, say, the Cousin and the A6 Techo. But that's what this looks like. Now I'm going to just show you some examples of how I've filled out this page. So this is an example. You can see some days I don't even fill out the whole page, and some days I fill it out. One of the things I really like to do with this book is I like to record whether it's ink samples that I've received or ink bottles that I've purchased. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I just think it's fun to remember what inks I was into at different times in the year. It just adds a lot of color that I really enjoy. So this is a quick sampling of a bunch of ink samples that I got from Tiffany when I met her in February of this year. So this is one thing that I really like to do. This is another example of inks that I added to my collection. And then this is really fun. These are glow-in-the-dark stickers that I made as party favors for my nephew's birthday party. So it took me a really long time to figure out how to print and cut these glow-in-the-dark stickers for some reason. I don't really know why it was so difficult, but it was really fun to create these things. And I just liked that I was able to add some of these as memories to my journal. This is an example of adding a photo to the page. So we went on a road trip this year, and it was a really memorable time because my partner had just become a citizen. In retrospect, I would probably have loved to have added even more photos than I already do, but I was genuinely worried about it being too bulky. I think as the years progress, I'm probably going to be a little more liberal with adding photos because they really help me to remember that moment. So this is something that I really love about the 5-year, in that in 2023, I wrote about school tasks that I was doing. And then the same day, the next year, I wrote about how I met someone in my neighborhood who I bought a bottle of Pilot Iroshizuku ink from, and then she ended up giving me all these extra ink samples. And then the same day this year was the day that I found out that I had completed all of the requirements to drop my qualifying status. And I really love being able to see the progression in my life, where I was able to document being in school, but then also being done and getting to this point. This is another example of me adding things into here. So a friend sent me some flowers, and I saved one of the petals and I flattened it in this book, and it barely takes up, like, it doesn't really add that much bulk. So I really loved being able to capture that memory in this way. On this day specifically, I had a lot to say. It was a really memorable day. So I loved that I had extra room over here. And then I also did a very quick sketch of this beautiful writing desk that I found off Facebook Marketplace. And I mean, the drawing isn't really anything too exciting, but I appreciated having this room to be able to extend a memory onto this page. Here's just another example of different ink swatches that I received. And then this day is reserved for it being Hobonichi Day. So in Canada, where I am, it's August the 31st. So I just talked about each of the different, like each year I kind of talked about what my experience was like on that day. And then in 2024, I clearly had a lot to say, where over here, this corresponds to 2023. And then this red is some of my thoughts for Hobonichi Day in 2024. And given that I didn't make a purchase on Hobonichi Day in 2025, I didn't have a lot to say. I think it's really cool to go back and just be able to compare what was going on each year. Now I just want to share some thoughts on my overall experience. So in terms of filling this out, I do want to say that the one thing that I think has helped me to be consistent in this book is to take off the pressure of filling this out on a daily basis. I know that I struggle with doing anything on a daily basis, and because I know that about myself, I went into the book just not putting that pressure on myself to update this every single day. So typically what happens is I update this every few days or once a week, where I will sit down on Sunday and I will go through some of my planners and take a look at what was going on for that day to jog my memory so that I can fill out the memory here. In an ideal world, I would do this on a daily basis. That probably makes the most sense, but because I know that that would be a really big stretch for me and I wouldn't end up enjoying the experience, I just don't put that pressure on myself. This is an A5 size, and originally when I had decided I wanted to try the 5-year journal, I did actually want the A6 size, but by the time I decided I wanted the A5, I wanted the 5-year, they were sold out everywhere unless I wanted to spend significant amount of money to buy it from like a third-party seller. So I went ahead and I got the A5 size, and there are days when I feel like having the extra space is great. Like when I get ink samples, this is such a great way to use up space, and I do think that if I were in an A6 size, I wouldn't be able to be as creative on the right hand, like the right page. But then there are some days where I just don't have a lot to say. Like even here on this day, I really just didn't have much to report. So a lot of the right pages end up being blank. So I think there are benefits to having the A5, and overall, I've appreciated having this space. I think it'll be interesting to see in the final 2 years, like how many of these pages are still more blank than they are full. But I haven't decided if I were to do another 5-year at the end of 2027, which I think I want to. I'm not sure if I'm going to go for another A5 or if I'll go for an A6 size. But I do find this space generally is good, and I do tend to be kind of a wordy person, so it's not usually too hard for me to fill up this box. And there are occasions where I do end up using this space as well, but it is quite a big book, and I do really love this A6 size, so I'm not sure what I'll do in the future, but I'm going to stick with this obviously till the end of 2027. And then I have kept this book mainly pen only, and because of that, the writing experience throughout the entire book has been lovely. So actually, now that I look at this is almost as thick as the Hibino. Maybe the Hibino is a little bit thicker. And I do have to say that this lies a lot more flat on this side compared to the Hibino. I wonder if the experience of the A6 is similar to this, or if it's more similar to this. If anyone has the A6 size, let me know if it's comfortable writing in the A6 5-year, because I am curious. One of my favorite things about this book is the fact that I can review past entries when I'm filling out the entry for the current year. I am a sentimental person, and I do really appreciate even the small moments. So I really love being able to see like what I was doing on that day 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and it gets more fun as you enter into subsequent years. So having the historical context right in front of you is why I have been able to keep up with this long-term project, and I'm glad that I finally took on the 5-year journal, because I had known about 5-year journals for a while before I decided to start this one, and I always thought that it was crazy and that I would never be able to keep up with something like that on a daily basis for 5 years. But I think being able to adapt my approach and make accommodations for myself and make it more realistic for me has been really helpful for keeping me consistent in here. So I pretty much have an entry for every day, which is wild. There's a former version of myself that would have never believed that I could have stuck with one book for so long. I think one of the reasons why I like being able to see past entries is it really helps to highlight personal growth. So again, like going from being a student to dropping and qualifying for my designation, I think that is something that I'm really happy about, and it's nice just having these reminders. On this one, I talked about going to my sister's school and helping her set up. I also talked about my in-laws having visited and just being able to spend time with them. And then the next year on this day, I opened up a bank account for my private practice, which is maybe a minor detail, but I think it's just really cool to see the contrast 1 year later. And then this year, I went back to my sister's classroom and I was able to help her out again. And this was also around the time that Coconut was sick and we had to take him to the vet, which obviously wasn't great, but it's just really cool to see that progression here. And I can remember like how I felt on this day now that I'm reading this, even though I don't have a photo. I can remember being at the bank, being in the office, and then here I'm cherishing these memories that I get to have with my sister, as well as taking care of Coconut when he wasn't doing so well. So yeah, it has a lot of emotional impact for me. And it also helps to concretize my personal growth. And I love that it is all documented in here. So I have a place that I can go to if I want some evidence that I've done things or that my life is changing, and in what way. Would I recommend this book? Well, I am biased. Obviously, I'm nearing the end of my 3rd year and I plan on continuing. So generally speaking, I would absolutely recommend this if you are someone who is interested in being able to see this kind of progression. I would say it's probably best for someone who likes short snippets. So something that I haven't done yet is committed to like a 1 day a page journal, and I still think about it sometimes, but I think this is a nice compromise in that you are recording something every day for a year, but even better than that, you get to have it all in one place so that you can compare differences over the years. It's also really interesting as a long-term project. This is obviously dependent on what you enjoy, but I love a good long-term project. I think there's something about like a personal narrative that I have that I don't see things through, or that I don't finish things, or I lose interest in things quickly. And so I think there's a stubborn side of me that likes to challenge that narrative and sometimes likes to seek out long-term projects. In the past, I've talked about doing things like a temperature blanket where you crochet a square for a blanket that represents every day of the year. And I know that when I first heard of that project, my initial reaction was, that sounds like torture. That sounds horrible to be forced to do this thing every day. And then the more I thought about it, the more I got really excited about it. And I ended up spending a year making a temperature blanket, which I still use, and I feel so proud when I look at it. So when I took this on, I knew it was going to be a big undertaking because I knew that I was going to get more upset if I dropped off and didn't see this through. So I knew when I bought this book that this was going to feel like a very long-term commitment. And honestly, in some ways, I'm surprised I'm already on the 3rd year and that I'm almost reaching the 4th year. I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I don't feel like it's, I don't feel any negativity towards it. I just feel grateful that past me decided to invest in documenting my life in this way. It can be challenging though if you do struggle with consistency. And I think my approach to that was meeting myself where I'm at and recognizing that a daily consistency was not really going to be something that I could keep up with. And even with my temperature blanket, I didn't necessarily do 1 square every day. I tended to wait a few days and then do 2 or 3 squares at a time. And I think it was just knowing myself and knowing my patterns allowed me to enter this project in a way where I was able to adapt it to set myself up for success. The last thing that I would consider if you are thinking about getting a 5-year is just consider the size. I thought it might be nice to show you some almost full pages so you can get a sense of how you could use this page if you wanted to. But the A6, like this is an A6. Imagine doing a 5-year in here. This would be so easy to fill out. And then beyond Hobonichi, there are other brands that make 5-year journals. So you could potentially get even a blank notebook for whatever size you feel most comfortable in, and you could turn it into a 5-year. There was a part of me that even considered in a future year using this Hibino and turning this into a 5-year journal or a 10-year journal. You could easily break this up into a similar layout to the 5-year, and you could use this instead if you really wanted to. So I think just the concept of having a long-term multi-year journal is very interesting to me, and I know it may not be for everyone, but I have really loved this journal, and even though it doesn't get a lot of attention on my channel, I consider this a essential in my overall journal ecosystem, and I am glad that I got to spend a little bit of time showing you more of like a long-term review of it, just to give you a sense of what you could look forward to if this is something that you're interested in or you're thinking about taking on in 2026. All right, well, that is everything that I had for you today. Let me know if you are someone who is either already keeping a 5-year journal or if you're thinking about it. I'd love to hear your experiences either way. And if you are getting a journal for next year, let me know what cover you're looking at. Let me live vicariously through you. I am going to stick with this cover, and maybe I will treat myself to a new cover in 2028 if I do get another 5-year Techo. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're still here, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye!